Hey everyone, this is Kenji. Today we're going to make spaghetti carbonara. Actually, probably bucatini carbonara. Doesn't really matter. Pasta with carbonara sauce. It's one of the Roman classics, one of the 4 Roman classics. We've already done the first 3. So we've done cacio e pepe, we've done bucatini my Italian pronunciation is terrible, I'm sorry. La matriciana and alla gricia are the other 3. So this one's carbonara. It's made with, it's a sauce of eggs, pecorino romano or parmesan, and then guanciale. So we're going to start with the fat here. So you have a couple choices. Traditionalists will say you need to use guanciale, which is the jowl, the cheek of the pig that's been cured with salt and pepper. Other people will say it's totally fine to use pancetta. I think it's totally fine to use whichever you want. This is some of sous chef Eric's pancetta, by the way. You can also use, if all you can get is a regular American bacon, then go for it with that too. It's going to be just fine. It might taste a little different. Some people might tell you that it's not true carbonara if you make it that way. I don't really care what other people say, as long as it tastes good. I think that's all that really matters. So we're going to take this and we're going to cut it into nice kind of thick little chunks. Like this. This one's, so guanciale has a kind of slightly funkier flavor than pancetta. And if you see, let me show you here. Oh, there's one for you. Shabu. Down there, look. And if you see, it also tends to have quite a bit more fat, like a higher fat content than regular pork belly. So bacon, pancetta is made from belly. Guanciale is made from the jowl, which is a little bit fattier than the belly. Cut it into chunks. I got some water going here in a skillet that's for the pasta. And then over here on this side, I got another skillet for the guanciale, and that's where we're gonna finish cooking everything. I'm gonna start it with just a touch of olive oil. You don't really need to do that. I just find it makes it easier to start it off so that it starts rendering, and then eventually you see it's gonna start just sizzling in its own fat. Now let's look at the pasta. So pasta, you got a few choices again. So here I've got spaghetti, well, thick spaghetti, I guess what they call spaghettoni, thick spaghetti, and here I have bucatini. But between these two pastas, there's a more significant difference than just the shape. So this thick spaghetti is sort of the standard, relatively inexpensive supermarket stuff, modern pasta. And you can see, so this stuff is made by extruding the dough through Teflon-coated dies, and that makes production go much faster. Whereas traditional pasta is made through bronze dies, so it sticks a little more and it has to go slower. But what that also means is that traditional pasta tends to have rougher edges and more sort of free starch, and so it's going to cling to the sauce a little bit better. The sauce is going to cling to the pasta better than it would with modern pasta. The other difference is that modern pasta tends to be dried at a relatively high temperature, and so that's what gives it that sort of darker color, that darker yellow color. But it also deactivates the starch so that it doesn't thicken your sauce as much when you use it. So I'm going to go with the more old-fashioned pasta. I also tend to prefer the shape of bucatini. You want to do about 100 grams per person, maybe 80 grams per person. I'm just making it for one right now. That's about right for one. I'm making it for one, and I think I'll share this with my daughter. Actually, there's enough guanciale in there for like 3, but oh well. All right, so pasta water's here. I'm going to season it with a little bit of salt, not too much because it has all these other salty ingredients. One thing neat, so you might notice when I put salt in the water, and you might have noticed before, if you have a pot of boiling water and you pour some salt in it, all of a sudden it really vigorously boils. And some people falsely say that that's because salt lowers the boiling temperature of water, therefore it releases a bunch of gas all at the same time because you've suddenly lowered its boiling temperature. Some people also say that you should wait until after the water comes to a boil before you add the salt because it makes it come to a boil faster. Neither of those things are true. I mean, it is technically true that salt will lower the boiling point of water, but not to a measurable amount, at least not to a noticeable amount with this amount of salt that you're putting in it. What really is going on there is that what you're doing is you're adding nucleation sites. So nucleation sites are like little points where bubbles can form. So for instance, like if you look at a glass of champagne, you'll see bubbles always come from the same spot, and that's because there's like micro imperfections. Here, actually, let me show you. There's micro imperfections in the glass. Yeah. So this is Weihenstephaner, oldest brewery in the world, German beer. It's excellent. I think in another video I made a joke and said that it was garbage or something. No, it's excellent. It's a Hefeweizen. So you see, not too many bubbles right now because I poured it very carefully. So if I suddenly want, first I'm gonna take a sip so I don't waste it. If I suddenly want a lot of bubbles to appear, all I have to do is add a little bit of salt to it. And what that does is it introduces nucleation sites. So essentially they're just points where the bubbles can start forming. So this is actually a trick we use when we're doing photo shoots at the restaurant and we have, sorry. And we have a beer in the shot. If the photo shoot is taking too long, oops, I got the hiccups. Hold on a second. Sorry. If the photo shoot is taking too long and the beer starts to lose its head, we take a little bit of salt and sprinkle it in that beer so that we don't have to pour a whole new beer, and it makes that foam come right back, makes the photo beautiful, and it makes the beer taste like salty garbage. The other place where you might see nucleation sites, or where you might have heard of them, is vapor trails from airplanes, from jet airplanes. So what those are is actually airplanes, the combustion, the products of combustion that are flying out of the engines, those act as nucleation sites for the condensation of water in the air. So if it's a moist day out, if it's high humidity up there, but there aren't a lot of nucleation sites, then when the jet engine passes through, it creates those sites, and that's why the water condenses around them. Other places where there's nucleation sites are like in the early universe when galaxies and planets were forming, they all formed around nucleation sites. All right, so the reason I started my pancetta before my pasta is I'm going to turn it off heat now before the pasta is done, because I want this pan to be nice and cool. If the pan is too hot later on when we add our pasta and our egg sauce, the eggs turn into scrambled eggs. And you don't want scrambled eggs in your carbonara. The first time I had heard of carbonara actually was when I was a student, freshman year, when I was a student, and there was a girl from Italy, from Rome, Carolina, if you're watching this, I don't know if you are, but she lived in my fraternity house, and she was from Rome, and she kept telling me about all this Italian food, Roman food, and one of the ones she mentioned was carbonara, and I was like, oh, what's that? And she's like, it's basically like spaghetti with bacon and scrambled eggs, which of course it's not really, and I don't think she meant it. I think that was just kind of a lost in translation type moment, but it's not really scrambled eggs. What you really want is eggs to be the eggs are there to really bind the sauce to the pasta. It should be silky and smooth and not scrambled. And she did make it for us, and it was delicious. That was the first time I had carbonara. So pecorino cheese, pecorino Romano. This is sheep's milk cheese, aged nice and sharp. I'd say about an ounce, like 30 grams, maybe an ounce and a half, 45 grams per person. 1 egg per serving also. If you want to go like sort of extra decadent, you can add an extra egg yolk. I'm not going to do that today just because I don't feel like being extra decadent. Plenty of black pepper. This is a unicorn pepper mill. I like them. They have the main thing you want to look for in a pepper mill is that it has a metal burr. Actually, this pepper mill is made in Italy. That it has a metal burr so that, ones with plastic burrs or polycarbonate burrs tend to wear down over time. Metal burrs don't. The other thing you could use for the pepper is this molcajete or mortar and pestle. All right, so we get our eggs, we get our cheese. No cream. Carbonara typically doesn't have cream, although, if you want to put cream in it, I'm not going to stop you. I think it's just fine. I've had carbonara with cream in it from restaurants before, and even though it wasn't what I was expecting, it still can taste just fine. Same thing with like other things that you'll commonly see in sort of Italian-American restaurants frequently, cream in the carbonara sauce, or sometimes peas. Whatever. If you like peas in your carbonara, do it. Some people insist that you then can't call it carbonara. I don't really care. Call it whatever you want. As long as it tastes good to you, it doesn't really matter, right? All right, so our pasta is coming along. The name carbonara, by the way, is the name came after the pasta dish. So the pasta dish is pretty ancient. Pasta alla gricia is the oldest of the 4 Roman pasta dishes. That's been around for like thousands of years, and that is just pasta guanciale and cacio with pecorino Romano cheese. Guanciale, pecorino Romano cheese, and pasta. That's alla gricia. At some point later on, the egg was introduced to it, and then at some point after that, people started calling it carbonara. But really, so the name comes from, it could, it's actually not very well known. It could be that it was a common dish for coal miners to eat. It could be that it was you know what, now that I look at this, I am gonna add that extra yolk. Screw it, let's go. Carbonari are the coal miners. That's the Italian name for coal miners. I think I'm pronouncing that right, and I think I got the word right. I'm sure you'll tell me if I didn't. All right, an extra egg yolk going in there. So it could be that it's coal miners pasta, and in fact, in parts of the US, it is called coal miners pasta. Another theory is that the little specks of black pepper look like little bits of coal. But in any case, it doesn't really matter where the name came from. All we know is that that's what it's called and that it's delicious. Anybody in Rome should know how to make this dish. It's sort of like it's like a late night, drunk stable. You come home with your friends and you throw on a pot of pasta and you make carbonara. What am I looking for? What am I looking for? Why don't I get a fork? Well, let me get a plate too. There we go. Ceramica Rampini. So this is an Italian ceramic company, but it was actually hand painted in Colombia, which is where my wife and I got it. All right, that's where pasta's looking good right now. So right now it's where'd my tongs go? Oh well, it's al dente, a little bit just shy of al dente, which is where we want it. Because if it gets too, just like sort of scrambled eggs, like if your pasta is perfectly cooked in the pasta water, then it's going to overcook by the time it's done cooking in the sauce. So we want it to be just shy of al dente when we add it to here. And this is just right. All right. So it's got some pasta water in there. That pasta water, you can see it's nice and starchy. And in fact, I'm going to splash a little bit more. Just a little bit more. That's the sort of magic ingredient that's going to help our sauce bind together. So pasta water, you can see that it's already, you saw how much sort of fat was in there from that rendered fat from the guanciale, and you can see that it's already not greasy, right? The pasta water helps it emulsify into a sort of creamy sauce, and that's exactly what you want. So now we're ready to add our egg mixture. Once the egg mixture goes in there, you got to keep moving it. And you want to make sure that your pan is relatively cool. My colleague at Serious Heats, Daniel Gritzer, he has a technique where he dumps everything into this pan and then does it over a double boiler to slowly thicken it up, which you can do if you're if you've had trouble with carbonara in the past and it turns into scrambled eggs. You can definitely use that method and it helps. It's just a little slower, and I don't feel like being slower today. There you go. And that's essentially it. We are done. Let it thicken up just a tiny bit more. Tiny bit more. Probably could have done with just a little bit more pasta. I tend to always overdo the amount of sauce the dish needs. But the nice thing about it is that, oh, sorry. So you see how glossy and creamy it is. It's not wet. It's not greasy. It's definitely not scrambled. That's really what you're looking for. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just going to pull it, since I made a little bit too much sauce, I'm just going to pull the bucatini kind of through it to coat it in the sauce, and then we'll spoon over the excess. And then what I'll do is I'll save this sauce for later, and when my wife gets home, she will have, I will cook some more pasta for her, and she'll use it up. Oh, hold on a second, Alicia. Meanwhile, my daughter and I are going to enjoy this batch. A little extra pepper. We got a tiny bit left of that pecorino left. All right. So here we go. This is classic bucatini carbonara. Oh man. It's so good. And that guanciale is... The thing that guanciale brings that pancetta doesn't is that because it's so high in fat, you get that kind of crispy shell on the outside that kind of just melts away in the middle. It's kind of like it's like the gushers of bacon, you know? Pork gushers. Here you go, Shella. Come on, you want one? Here you go, buddy. All right. My daughter's waiting. I'll see you next time.